Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I'm the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. Hey, it's good to be back. I'm glad you're with me, and I appreciate you tuning in once again. I've been away for almost 5 days, at least 5 days, I think. I had to go up north, that is northern Canada, to take care of some business. It's been a hectic month, and I do apologize for my lack of consistency in these videos, but I've had to deal with some business things that needed attention, and going forward, I really will do my best to be more consistent in these videos, work our way through Matthew 24 sooner than later, and get on to something else. But I really wanted to do a video. I just got home this evening, maybe an hour ago. It's almost 1 a.m. Tuesday morning, my time. So I'll keep this video short, but I really did want to share some thoughts on our study on Matthew 24, not only for you, but for me. I totally missed it while I was gone, and I wish I would have brought my computer. I probably would have had time to do a video or two while I was gone, but I didn't. So here we are, Matthew 24:31. I'm going to read the text, and in this video, I'm simply going to keep this short. I'm going to lay a little bit of foundation for where we're going to go in the next couple videos regarding Matthew 24 and 31. So let me read the text, and we'll jump in here. So, following Jesus' prophecy that they would see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, obviously in fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy, Jesus says this, "And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." Now, taking into consideration everything we've gone through up to this point, it shouldn't surprise us that once again Jesus is quoting Old Testament prophecy. He is prophesying the fulfillment of several, at least two, well, way more than that, but we're going to look at least two specific prophecies out of the book of Isaiah that concern the gathering of Israel in their last days. And those are in Isaiah 27 and Isaiah 11. Now, obviously, Jesus is not he's not speaking in literal terms, just like we've seen all over Matthew 24. He's using metaphorical, prophetic language that denotes something other than itself. And this idea of a trumpet and a gathering is not to be taken literal. Just like the stars falling from heaven, the moon not shedding its light, etc., is not to be taken literal. As a matter of fact, this gathering in Matthew 24:31, the gathering of the elect, is the same gathering that the Jews rejected throughout Jesus' ministry that he spoke of in Matthew 23:29 and following. Jesus said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I wished to gather you together as a hen gathers her chicks, but you were unwilling." Let me ask you a question. Was Jesus attempting in his ministry to gather Israel, ethnic Israel, in a physical manner? Was he gathering them geographically into Palestine, into Jerusalem? No, he wasn't. Of course he wasn't. He wasn't gathering Israel to a national kingdom. He wasn't gathering them to geopolitical restoration, a physical kingdom restoration. That's not what his mission was. He was gathering them to himself through the forgiveness of sins and through the establishment of their promised new covenant. That's what he was gathering them to, and they rejected that. And in Matthew 24:31, this is the culmination of that gathering. This is the gathering of the elect who had come out of the Jews that rejected that gathering, and this elect had received Christ. They had received their kingdom. They had accepted the nature of the fulfillment of their promises as prophesied in the Old Testament, and they were being gathered together into the kingdom, into Jesus Christ at his coming. So we're going to look at that from the Old Testament prophecies as well as the New. But in this video, like I said, I simply want to look at two Old Testament prophecies where Jesus was quoting from, and one prophecy that Jesus spoke himself in his ministry that he was also drawing from, which helps us to understand his words. So first one, let's go to Isaiah chapter 27. I'm going to try to be brief. I'm just going to read the texts, and we'll hit them shortly in passing, and we'll wrap this up. So Isaiah 27:12 and 13. Watch this. In that day, the Lord will start his threshing from the flowing stream of the Euphrates to the brook of Egypt, and you will be gathered up one by one, O sons of Israel. It will come about also in that day that a great trumpet will be blown, and those who are perishing in the land of Assyria and those who are scattered in the land of Egypt will come and worship the Lord in the holy mountain at Jerusalem. Now notice, this prophecy is specifically, the wording is exactly what Jesus prophesied in Matthew 24:31. At the sounding of a trumpet, Israel would be gathered up one by one. And they would be brought into a relationship and into a habitation in Jerusalem. Now, this isn't geographical Jerusalem over in the Middle East. This is the new Jerusalem, obviously, and we're going to show that to you. And notice the phrase in Isaiah 27 and 27, 12, and 13. It says, in that day. Well, you might ask, well, what day is that? That's our future. Well, no. That day is determined by the context of Isaiah 27, which is found in the larger context of what is known as the little apocalypse, which runs from Isaiah 24 to Isaiah 30. So we're going to look at that entire context. Not going to look at every verse by any means, but we're going to look at that context, which places this gathering of Israel at the sounding of the trumpet in the last days and at the end of the Old Covenant age. And notice, at that time, the Lord would start his threshing. So this is the threshing, the sifting of Israel. This is harvest imagery. Okay, so this is at the time of harvest, which is important. Second text I want to look at, which we're going to look at further as we go on, is Isaiah 11. And let's look at verses 11 and 12. Watch this. Again, this is one of Jesus's Old Testament sources for his words in Matthew 24:31. Then it will happen on that day that the Lord will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people who will remain from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he will lift up a standard for the nations and will assemble the banished ones of Israel and will gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Once again, we have the gathering of Judah, the gathering of the remnant of Israel. And notice the language in this. In verse 11, it says, it will happen on that day that the Lord will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people. Now that second time is imagery of a second Exodus, where he's gathering and recovering his people a second time. And we're going to look at the idea of a second Exodus in the days of Jesus and in the first century as well, which places a framework around Matthew 24:31. And the final text I want to look at that Jesus was drawing from in Matthew 24:31 was his own prophecy in Matthew 13 and the parable of the wheat and the tares. Let me just read verse 30, then 37 down to 43. Watch this. We all know the parable. I'm just going to pick it up in verse 30. Allow both to grow together, that is the wheat and the tares, until the harvest. Remember Isaiah 27. Israel would be threshed. The Lord would start his threshing. That's the time of harvest. We're talking about the same time here, same time frame, the time of harvest. And Jesus calls that the end of the age, by the way. We'll get to that. Matthew 24:30, allow both to grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather up the tares and bind them in bundles and burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So we have the gathering of this wheat. By the way, that is Matthew chapter 3 and John the Baptist's message, which we will also get to. Now jump down to Matthew 13:37, and we'll read this down to 43. And he said, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. Now he's explaining the parable. The field is the world. As for the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom, and the tares are the sons of the evil one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. And the harvest, that is the time of threshing, is the end of the age. And the reapers are the angels. Just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. Remember Matthew 24 and verse 3, disciples asked about the end of the age. Verse 41, the Son of Man will send forth his angels. That's Matthew 24:31. He'll send forth his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth. This is the gathering of the wheat. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And I'm way out of time. But that is a direct quotation from Matthew 24 and 31. At the sound of the trumpet, he would send forth his angels, and he would gather together his elect, the tares from among the wheat. So, as we go forward, we're going to look at Isaiah 27, we're going to look at Isaiah 11, and we're going to look at Matthew 13, and some other texts that dovetail with all of that. And we're going to identify this gathering together of the elect at the sound of the trumpets in Matthew chapter 24:31 as the gathering of all Israel and the salvation of all Israel at the coming of the Lord, which took place in AD 70 at the end of the Old Covenant age. We'll do that next time on Answers on Eschatology. Thanks so much. Bye for now.